The sun beat down mercilessly on the polished sidewalks of Pacific Heights, where afternoon diners lounged under striped umbrellas, sipping Chardonnay and discussing business, vacations, and boardroom betrayals. The silverware clinked softly against porcelain. Laughter rippled across the patio of Del Mar, an upscale fusion restaurant with an ocean view and a waitlist 3 weeks long. No one noticed her at first. She stood by the black iron fence that enclosed the patio, barely a shadow against the brilliance of white tablecloths and pastel dresses. Kayla Monroe, 19 years old, barefoot, and heavily pregnant, clutched the thin fabric of her oversized hoodie tightly around her body. Her skin, once smooth and golden, was now dulled by grime and sun. Her eyes scanned the tables, furtively, carefully, as if calculating who might be the least cruel. She didn't scream or wave a sign. She didn't approach with a cup or a plea for change. Instead she whispered, just above the hum of city sounds, "Excuse me, do you have any leftovers?" At the first table she approached, a woman in a pale blue jumpsuit wrinkled her nose and looked away. Her husband, glancing at Kayla's swollen belly, muttered under his breath, "Jesus. Not again." A server briskly walked by, pretending not to see her. Kayla took a few shaky steps further along the fence. She paused again, trembling from more than just heat. Hunger gnawed at her spine. Her back ached from days of sleeping on the concrete behind a community church. She hadn't eaten anything since the banana she'd been handed at the shelter yesterday, if one could even call that eating. "Please," she said again, almost inaudible. "Just a few scraps." Further down the patio, at a table set for one, sat a man who didn't look like he belonged there either, not because of his clothes, but because of his stillness. Ethan Callahan was the type of man whose silence could fill a room. 38, sharp-featured, tall, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than most people's rent. He wasn't talking, wasn't laughing, wasn't even looking around. He was swirling a glass of Cabernet without drinking it, tapping something on an iPad, and barely touching his salmon. A few diners recognized him but didn't dare approach. Ethan Callahan wasn't just wealthy, he was untouchable. CEO of Orion Tech, the man who turned predictive algorithms into billions, the kind of figure whose name got printed in Forbes and whispered in boardrooms. Kayla didn't know who he was. She only saw a man eating alone, whose plate still had food on it. She approached slowly, her arms wrapped around her belly, every nerve in her body screaming to turn back. But she was too hungry to listen. "Sir," she said gently, "I'm sorry to bother you, but are you done with your food?" "I haven't eaten and she stopped, too dizzy to finish the sentence. Ethan looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. His eyes flicked over her, the matted curls escaping her hood, the cracked skin on her lips, the shoes she wasn't wearing, the round belly straining the zipper of her sweatshirt. "I'm in a meeting," he said curtly, not raising his voice but not softening it either. Kayla took a step back, murmuring, "Sorry. I didn't mean." And then she faltered. Her knees buckled slightly, her hands instinctively clutching her belly. The movement was almost imperceptible, but it shifted something in Ethan's face. He blinked, then stared at her longer. Not at the dirt or the ragged clothes. He looked at her hands on her belly. At the way she swayed slightly from exhaustion. At the eyes, not begging, not even angry, just tired. The waiter came up beside him. "Mr. Callahan, would you like me to remove her? She does this sometimes. Security can escort." Ethan raised one hand, not breaking eye contact with Kayla. "Wait," he said quietly. "Just wait." The waiter blinked, unsure. Ethan turned back to Kayla. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Kayla." "And the baby's father?" Her eyes dropped. "Gone. Left when I told him I was pregnant." There was a beat of silence, long and full. Ethan slowly set down his wine glass. "You look like you're about to collapse," he said, softer now, almost under his breath. "That's not an insult. That's concern."
Kayla's lips trembled.
"It's just hunger. I'll go. I didn't mean to sit or anything." She backed up again, but Ethan was already standing. He took off his jacket and, to the visible shock of several diners, gently draped it over her shoulders.
A woman gasped.
Someone else whispered, "Is he serious?" But Ethan ignored them all. He was staring at Kayla the way a man might stare at a ghost he hadn't expected to see. He thought of Lillian. standing in the hospital room, laughing, holding her own belly, right before the crash. He hadn't been able to look at a pregnant woman the same way since. And now here she was, this girl, this stranger, shaking under his jacket, asking for crumbs. A heartbeat inside a body that was being slowly erased by the city around her. Kayla tried to return the jacket. I'm sorry. I just need food, that's all.
Nothing more.
You need more than that, Ethan said.
You need a doctor. You need a safe place.
And food. You need all of it. She blinked. But I can't go anywhere fancy. I don't belong. Ethan turned slightly, gestured to the valet. Get the car, he said into his phone. Then to her, trust me. Just this once. Kayla hesitated, but her legs gave out. She nearly collapsed into the chair across from him. People stared. Phones came out. Someone scoffed. Ethan glanced around. If any of you ever speak about a pregnant woman like that again, he said calmly, may life show you what it means to be invisible. The patio fell silent. In that silence, Kayla Monroe, barefoot and bruised by the world, sat in the chair of a billionaire. And for the first time in weeks, she began to cry, not from fear, but from the fragile weight of kindness. The back seat of the black Tesla was quiet. Kayla sat pressed against the door, Ethan's jacket still around her thin shoulders. She kept her eyes down, hands protectively folded over her belly, as if afraid that even in this luxurious silence, someone might try to take something from her. Ethan Callahan sat on the other side, staring out the window but not seeing the San Francisco skyline. His mind had wandered far from the city streets. He could still hear her voice, soft, scared, apologetic, as she asked for leftovers. He had heard thousands of voices in boardrooms, pitches, conferences, but none had unsettled him the way hers had.
The driver, Daniel, glanced at Ethan through the rearview mirror.
Heading to the Bayview Clinic, sir? Ethan gave a short nod. And call ahead. Tell them we need full prenatal. No insurance, no paperwork. Just move. Kayla looked up sharply. You don't have to. I do, Ethan interrupted, not harshly, but with finality. Don't argue with me in the car. It's not a good place for a debate. She fell silent again, but her shoulders tensed. Ethan sighed, ran a hand through his hair, then turned slightly toward her. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. She didn't respond. He shifted uncomfortably. The interior of the car was cool, but his shirt clung to his back with a thin layer of sweat. She reminded him too much of someone else. Not just the way she held her belly, but the weight in her eyes, the same weight Lillian had carried near the end. He hadn't thought about Lillian in months. Years, even. Not properly. He'd buried her too quickly, or perhaps buried himself instead.
They d'aimer in collège.
She was bold, funny, full of messy ideas and wild dreams. He was quiet, calculating, addicted to control. Somehow, they balanced each other. She taught him how to cook spaghetti. He taught her how to build a credit score. She wanted to be a painter. He wanted to own a company. Somehow, they ended up in a townhouse in Berkeley, surrounded by startup culture and nursery plans. And then, one rainy November evening, a car ran a red light. Lillian died on impact. Their daughter, still unborn, didn't survive the emergency C-section. Ethan hadn't been in the car. He'd been late. Working. He remembered every minute of that night, the phone call, the silence at the hospital, the empty bassinet at home. The smell of lavender lotion that never quite left their bedroom. He remembered too the months after, when people said all the wrong things. When they said nothing at all. It changed him. Or perhaps it froze him. And now here was this girl, Kayla, appearing out of nowhere, barefoot and trembling, asking for food with a life inside her belly that no one else seemed to see.
Et Adente hesitated.
Not really. Because in some deep subconscious place, he knew he was seeing a ghost.
Not of Lillian.
But of himself. Of who he could have been if everything had gone differently. They pulled into the side lot of Bayview Women's Health Center, a sleek two-story building with clean glass doors and discreet security. The staff greeted Ethan with a mix of surprise and immediate professionalism. No questions were asked when he walked in with Kayla. A nurse guided Kayla into a private exam room while Ethan sat in the waiting area, staring at a muted television playing a documentary on maternal health. His foot tapped anxiously. After 20 minutes, the nurse returned. She's stable, but clearly malnourished, the nurse said. The baby's heartbeat is faint, but consistent. She's very lucky to have made it this far without complications. Ethan stood. Can I? She wants to see you, the nurse said gently. He walked into the room slowly. Kayla sat on the exam table, legs dangling, holding a small printout of the ultrasound. Her eyes were wide, still red from tears, but she looked more present now, grounded. I heard it, she said, barely above a whisper. The heartbeat. Ethan nodded. Good. It's real, she said. Like. I knew she was in there. But now I heard her. He stayed quiet, letting the moment settle. Thank you, she said after a pause. No one's done anything like this for me before. Ethan shifted his weight. You don't owe me anything. Kayla looked down at the ultrasound again. I didn't think she'd make it. She stopped, shaking her head. You almost what? He asked gently. She hesitated. There was a night, maybe 2 weeks ago. I bought some pills.
Some Bacalé garbage.
I was going to take them. Ethan's jaw tightened. But I didn't, she went on. Because I heard someone outside the shelter singing.
A lu la bille.
And I thought, if no one ever sings to my baby, then what's the point? That's what stopped me. Ethan sat down in the chair across from her. That song saved her life.
She gave a small, broken log.
Yeah, I guess it did. They sat in silence, not the awkward kind, but the kind that stretches between people who have both known loss in different shapes. Finally, Ethan stood. You need rest. I have a guest house out near Napa. It's quiet, safe, and it has a stocked fridge. I'll have a nurse visit you daily.
Kayla blinked.
Why are you doing all this? He paused. Because I know what it's like to lose everything, he said. And I'd give anything to have heard that heartbeat one more time. She looked at him then, not with suspicion or awe, but with something closer to understanding.
Okay, she said softly. Just un petit Armstrong neuf.
Ethan nodded. Outside, the sky had begun to darken. The city lights flickered to life, but for the first time in weeks, Kayla didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And for Ethan Callahan, a man who had built his empire on seeing patterns in data, it was the first time in years that he saw something more important. A person. The drive to Napa Valley took a little over an hour. Kayla fell asleep halfway there, curled into herself with Ethan's jacket wrapped tightly around her. The car hummed softly, carrying her away from the chaos of the city and into a silence she hadn't known in months. The guest house was tucked behind rows of vines, nestled in the corner of a private vineyard that Ethan seldom visited anymore. It was a modest 2-bedroom place, originally built for family friends or short business days. Now, it stood quietly among the trees, like a secret waiting to be remembered. When the car pulled up, Ethan stepped out first and opened the door for her. Kayla blinked groggily as the scent of lavender and wild oak filled her senses. The porch creaked under her feet. It was the first time in months she had walked into a space with walls, clean air, and a door that locked from the inside. There were no marble countertops or crystal chandeliers. Just soft lighting, a small kitchen, neatly folded towels, and a basket of groceries already stocked in the fridge. Someone had made sure the place was ready before they arrived. Kayla wondered if this kind of thoughtfulness was normal in Ethan's world. I'll send someone by tomorrow morning, Ethan said, standing by the door. She's a nurse I trust. She'll help with whatever you need. Kayla nodded slowly, unsure of how to respond. You'll be safe here, he added, his voice more of a promise than a statement. She didn't know what to say to that, either. So she whispered the only thing she could manage. Thank you. He gave a short nod, then hesitated, as if wanting to say something else but thinking better of it. Then he left, leaving her in silence. For a long while, Kayla just stood there in the middle of the room. The fridge hummed quietly. Outside, cicadas whispered to each other in the fading light. She set the jacket down gently on the armrest of the couch and moved toward the small bedroom. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. Then she wept. It wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, exhausted sobbing, the kind that doesn't ask for anything, doesn't expect comfort, only release. Later, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folded blanket. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling a small flutter beneath her palm. "I'm sorry," she whispered.
Ich should have done better.
"I should have figured it out." The baby kicked again, lightly. A strange comfort in the darkness. That night, Kayla dreamed of running. In the dream, she was back in Oakland, near the alley where the shelter used to hand out sandwiches on Tuesdays. But the building was gone, and so was the crowd. She was alone, barefoot, the pavement burning her feet. She ran, clutching her belly, trying to find somewhere, anywhere, to sit down. But every door was locked. Every window closed. Then she saw a hospital in the distance. She ran toward it, but the moment she touched the door handle, it turned into a metal gate. A security guard stood behind it, shaking his head. No ID. No service. She screamed. But no sound came out. When she woke, the sheets were damp with sweat. It was still dark. Her heart pounded, but the room was still. Safe. She didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, as promised, a nurse arrived. Her name was Marta, a kind-faced woman in her 40s with warm eyes and a quiet way of moving. She brought vitamins, checked Kayla's vitals, and spoke gently as she examined her. "You're lucky," Marta said. "The baby is strong. You just need a little rest, a lot of hydration, and some steady meals." Kayla nodded. It felt strange being touched with care. Even medical care. She had grown used to cold gloves, hurried exams, and voices that didn't bother learning her name. After Marta left, Kayla sat on the porch, holding a cup of warm tea she had found in the cupboard. The vineyard stretched out before her, rows upon rows of green breathing in the summer sun. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, her body wasn't in survival mode. Her mind, however, was a different story. She didn't trust it, this peace. It felt like the kind of quiet that came right before everything crashed again. Like the night before a storm. And somewhere, beneath the safety of the guest house and the vines, she was right. Across the city, in a sleek glass tower overlooking Market Street, Ethan Callahan sat in his office, staring at a paused video on his computer screen. It was a grainy clip, taken by someone's phone. He recognized the setting immediately, Del Mar's patio. The angle caught him handing his jacket to Kayla, helping her sit down, pushing his plate toward her. Then, the audio cut in. "If any of you ever speak about a pregnant woman like that again, may life show you what it means to be invisible." The clip had gone viral overnight. On Reddit, on Twitter, and then picked up by a local news blog. The headlines varied, some applauding his kindness, others questioning his motives. Billionaire CEO gives jacket to pregnant homeless woman.
Héros hors PR move?
The internet debates Ethan Callahan's public gesture. Who is the woman at the table?
Internet slut want to know.
He sighed and closed the tab. His assistant, Jordan, walked in. "You've got a call from Carson at the board. They want to talk about optics." "I'm not interested in optics," Ethan said sharply.
Jordan hésitated.
"They think it's unorthodox. You helping her like this." "I didn't ask for permission." "I know. But they're worried it'll become a distraction." Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't surprised. He'd built his company on control, precision, and strategy. But what had happened with Kayla wasn't strategy. It wasn't anything. It just was. "Set up the call," he said finally.
Il est l'endelit.
As Jordan turned to leave, Ethan added, "And tell PR not to touch this story. No statements.
No spin."
Jordan nodded. Understood. Alone again, Ethan rubbed his temples. He could feel the storm brewing. Questions would come. Assumptions.
Headline.
And soon, people would come looking for Kayla. And he wasn't sure if she was ready for that. He wasn't sure if he was, either. By the third day, Kayla began to feel uneasy. Not because anything bad had happened, quite the opposite. The guest house remained peaceful, Marta arrived every morning like clockwork, and each day the kitchen seemed to refill itself with fresh produce, bread, and cartons of almond milk. She had never lived like this. Her body was starting to relax, but her mind was still on high alert. Safety, for people like her, was never permanent. It was always a trick, a prelude to the next fall. On the fourth day, while folding laundry by the open window, she noticed a drone hovering in the distance. It was barely audible, but unmistakable. She stepped outside onto the porch and squinted into the sky. The device hovered for a moment longer, then zipped away toward the vineyard entrance. The next morning, Marta arrived with her usual calm presence. But her eyes flickered with something new, tension. Did something happen? Kayla asked after the exam. Marta hesitated, then offered a tight smile. There were some reporters near the main gate earlier. The vineyard manager turned them away.
Kayla froze.
Reporters? Why? Marta gently placed the stethoscope in her bag. You've been online, Kayla. Someone filmed you at the restaurant with Mr. Callahan. It went viral. Kayla sat down slowly. Online. Marta nodded. Some people think you're brave. Others, not so much. Kayla's face flushed with dread. Do they know my name? Not yet, Marta said. But they're trying. And if they find you? Kayla gripped the arms of the chair. I didn't ask for this. I know, Marta said softly. But now you're part of something much bigger than a private moment. And people don't like it when they can't explain something. Kayla spent the rest of the afternoon indoors, away from the windows. She didn't touch the food Marta left. Her fingers trembled when she tried to dial the shelter she used to frequent, but she hung up before the call connected. She didn't belong in this world, not the world of manicured grapevines, touchscreen thermostats, and organic granola. She didn't even belong in the headlines.
She belonged in the silence.
That night, she had another dream. She was standing on a stage in front of a sea of faceless people. They shouted at her, threw questions like knives. What did you really do to get him to help you? Are you keeping the baby for attention? Why didn't you work harder? Do you even have a last name? She tried to speak, but her mouth was full of cotton. Her belly grew heavier, until she couldn't stand anymore. She collapsed, and woke up. At the same time, Ethan was in a conference call with his board of directors. The screen was split into 6 rectangles. Carson, the chairman, wore his usual Harvard tie and fake-friendly smile. Ethan, I'll just cut to it. We've had 4 major partners call in, asking if Orion's leadership is distracted. Distracted, Ethan repeated. Your name is trending, Carson continued. And not because of anything tech-related. There are op-eds.
Spéculation.
Some investors are concerned this could damage our credibility in markets where image is everything. Ethan didn't look surprised. Are they concerned I'm donating money or that I gave a homeless woman my leftovers? That's not how they're phrasing it, one of the women on the call interjected. They're calling it erratic behavior. Uncalculated. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Let me guess. You want me to cut ties with her? No one's saying that, Carson said. But optics matter. If this woman has a record. She doesn't. Ethan, you don't know that. Ethan's voice dropped, calm but firm.
Inowenef.
Silence followed. Then someone suggested putting out a statement, something neutral, something distancing. Ethan stood abruptly. I don't need PR to spin basic decency. If that's a problem for the board, you can call an emergency vote. Carson tried to play conciliator. Let's not escalate. We're just asking for caution. The internet loves a hero one day and burns him the next. Noted, Ethan said, then ended the call. He stared at the black screen for a long moment before exhaling slowly. What had started as a quiet act of compassion had now grown teeth. And it was turning on both of them. Later that evening, he drove out to the guest house. He hadn't planned to. In fact, he had told himself not to. But the idea of her sitting alone, unaware of the storm building, made it impossible to stay away. When he pulled up, the porch light was on, and he could see her silhouette through the curtain, sitting at the small kitchen table, shoulders slumped. He knocked gently. She opened the door a crack. Her eyes were wary. It's me, Ethan said. I thought you might want company. She opened the door fully, stepping aside. You didn't have to come. I know, he said, walking in. But I wanted to. He glanced around. The room was clean, neat, but something felt off. Too quiet. They found me, she said suddenly. Or they're trying to. I know, he replied. Kayla folded her arms. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to make you panic. I was already panicking. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. I didn't ask for this, she said. I just wanted food. I didn't want to be some story people argue about over coffee. I know.
What happened now?
Ethan sat down across from her. Whatever you want to happen. Kayla looked at him for a long time. I want to disappear, she said. But not just for me. For her. He looked at her belly, then back at her face. I can keep you off the radar for a while, he said. But it won't last forever. Eventually, they'll find out who you are. Her lips tightened. They won't find much. He frowned. I have no degree. No job. No address. No family. No record.
Just a name.
You have more than that, he said. Doi. He didn't answer. But later, when she walked him to the door, he turned to her. Kayla Monroe isn't just a name, he said. It's the start of a story. And you get to decide how it ends. She stood in the doorway, watching his car disappear down the road. For now, at least, she was still free. It was nearly midnight when Kayla finally decided. The guest house had gone still hours ago. The soft whir of the refrigerator and the distant rustle of the vineyard leaves were the only sounds left to remind her that the world was still moving. She sat cross-legged on the couch, holding a piece of paper in one hand and a pen in the other. The lamp beside her cast a golden hue across the room, and her eyes were red from staring at the blank page too long. What did you write to someone who gave you a roof when no one else had given you a chance? She had started 4 different versions of the note. None of them sounded right. They either felt too cold or too desperate. Too grateful or too apologetic. She didn't want to be a problem, but she didn't want to be pitied either. Eventually, she settled for something simple. Ethan. Thank you. For seeing me when no one else did. I just need to find my own way now.
Please don't come looking.
Kay. She folded the note and placed it on the kitchen table. Then she packed what little she had into the canvas tote bag Marta had given her, 2 pairs of maternity leggings, a sweatshirt, a few protein bars, the ultrasound printout. Ethan's jacket, she folded carefully and left on the arm of the couch. The baby moved as she stood.
À slow, steady roll juste bénéat rib.
She pressed a hand there and took a breath. We're gonna figure this out, she whispered. She didn't have a plan.
Not a real one.
But she knew staying here would only bring more attention. More reporters. More assumptions. She couldn't let her child enter a world where her first story was a headline. The vineyard gate was still unlocked. She walked through it slowly, her feet quiet on the gravel path, heart pounding with every step. By the time the sun rose, she was gone. Ethan didn't read the note until late the next morning. He had been in back-to-back meetings, distracted and irritable. He'd ignored 3 calls from Jordan and 1 from his mother, all of whom wanted to talk about the same thing, the video, the press, the fallout. But when Marta called and told him Kayla hadn't answered the door for her morning check-in, he drove straight to the guest house. It was empty. The bed made, the kitchen spotless. The note sat alone on the table. He read it once. Then again. The words were short but carried weight. She was gone, and she wanted it that way. He didn't call the police. Didn't track her phone, if she even had one. He simply stood in the quiet kitchen, jacket still folded on the couch, and let the silence fill the room. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. But not in her. In himself, perhaps. He had known, deep down, that she might leave. She was someone used to escaping, used to survival. Kindness was not a place she knew how to stay in. It didn't feel safe, even if it was. Especially if it was. He thought back to what she'd said.
You want to disappear.
But not just for me. For her. He had no right to argue with that. She was a mother first. And she was trying to protect her child the only way she knew how, by running. For the next few days, the world kept turning. The headlines began to cool. The social media frenzy moved on to a different scandal. Ethan gave no statements. He refused interviews.
Slowly, the noise faded into background static.
But she didn't come back. He tried not to think about her. Tried to bury himself in work. But each time he passed the guest house, he found himself slowing down, glancing toward the porch. Sometimes he imagined her there, rocking gently, holding the baby she hadn't yet named. Sometimes he imagined her alone in a shelter again, trying to stay warm. Sometimes he imagined nothing at all, because it was easier than caring. But the truth was, he did care. And that scared him. Kayla, meanwhile, found herself back in Oakland, navigating the corners of the city that remembered her. The old shelter near 7th Street had closed, but a new women's center had opened near the community college. It was crowded, noisy, but safe enough. She kept her head down. Didn't use her real name. She told people she was 20, though no one asked for ID. She helped clean the kitchen, watched over other women's kids when they had to make phone calls. She found calm in being useful. Her belly grew heavier. The days blurred. She went to the free clinic twice, both times using a fake name. She listened to her daughter's heartbeat again, and it felt like a secret only the two of them knew. She missed the vineyard, the quiet, the smell of lavender in the hallway. But she didn't regret leaving. Not yet. The world needed less noise, and she needed to become invisible again until she could stand tall without anyone holding her up. She told herself she'd reach out to Ethan one day, but only when she had something to show him. A month passed. Then 6 weeks. Ethan sat at his desk one morning, sipping coffee, reviewing a proposal from a new social impact firm. He wasn't paying attention. Then his assistant walked in, holding a manila envelope. "This came for you," Jordan said. "Hand-delivered.
No return address."
Ethan frowned, took the envelope, and opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten in a familiar style. Neat. Careful. And a second item, a proposal. He unfolded the pages. The letter was from Kayla. It was brief, but powerful. "I haven't forgotten what you did. I said I wanted to disappear. But maybe disappearing isn't the answer. I've been staying at a shelter that's doing good work. But they're overwhelmed. There's nowhere for women like me to go, not long-term, not with children. I want to build something. A place that doesn't treat us like burdens. Will you help? Kay." The proposal was for a small-scale residential program. 10 beds, rotating support staff, trauma-informed care, job training.
A place for young mother who had nowhere else to go.
She had even given it a name.
Amira House.
He stared at the words.
Amira.
He didn't need to ask. He knew. And for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Ethan read the proposal 3 times before setting it down. Each paragraph was clear, intentional, and thoughtful. It wasn't just a desperate idea scribbled in haste. Kayla had been planning. She had been working. She wasn't asking for shelter. She was asking for partnership. It had been a long time since someone surprised him like that. He walked to the window of his office, the San Francisco skyline stretching out in the pale morning light. Cars crawled through the streets below, lives overlapping in patterns his algorithms could track but never fully understand. And yet here was this woman who had nothing, offering something no business deal had given him in years, a sense of purpose. He picked up the phone. "Jordan," he said.
Clear my afternoon.
His assistant hesitated.
Even the venture review.
"Yes. Everything." Kayla was sorting canned goods in the back pantry when they told her someone had come to see her. She walked into the main room of the shelter and stopped cold. Ethan stood near the entrance, holding a brown folder in one hand, a faint smile on his face. He looked out of place here, too clean, too tall, too composed. But somehow, he didn't look judgmental. Just quietly determined. "I hope this isn't a bad time," he said. She stared at him, unsure whether to feel relieved or anxious. "You got my letter," she said. "I did. And the proposal." He stepped closer and held out the folder. "I added a few things. Zoning maps. Legal structuring. It's a real start if you want it to be." She took the folder and held it for a moment before opening it. Inside were blueprints, contact lists, preliminary funding schedules, like he'd built the bones of a house from her outline. "I thought you'd forgotten me," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "You asked me not to come looking."
I respected that.
Her throat tightened. "I wasn't sure you would." He looked around the crowded space, overfilled bulletin boards, worn-out furniture, children napping on mats in the corner. "This place is doing important work," he said. "But you're right. It's not enough." Kayla nodded. "They do what they can. But it's always temporary. And when you're a mom with no safety net, temporary is terrifying." Ethan met her eyes. "So let's build something permanent." She stared at him, then smiled, a small, wary smile. The kind that came with trust built slowly, brick by brick. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." That night, they sat on a bench outside the shelter as the sun slipped below the rooftops. Ethan had brought coffee. Kayla declined it. Her stomach couldn't handle caffeine this far along, but she wrapped her hands around the warm cup anyway. "I named her Amira," she said after a while. Ethan nodded. "I guessed. It's beautiful. It means princess. But not like a fairy tale princess. A strong one. One who survives." "You already made her one." Kayla looked down at her belly. "I just want her to believe the world isn't all sharp edges." He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Why now? Why reach out after all this time?" She shrugged. "Because I didn't want to be rescued. I wanted to rebuild. I wanted you to see me as more than a girl who needed help." "You never were just that," he said. She glanced at him. "You didn't know that when we met." "I do now." There was something honest in the way he said it. "Nos grandeurs, nos praises." Just truth. And that truth settled between them, soft and solid. Over the next 2 weeks, they worked together, quietly, deliberately. Ethan handled the logistics, permits, accountants, legal hurdles. Kayla met with local nonprofits, interviewed potential staff, spoke with mothers at shelters to understand what they needed most. She surprised herself with how naturally she moved through these conversations. People listened to her. Not because she came from money or wore a badge, but because she knew. She had lived it. Word started to spread. And not all of it was good. One afternoon, as Kayla helped repaint a wall in a donated space they hoped to convert into a nursery, a volunteer stared at her a little too long. "You look familiar," the woman said. Kayla froze, paintbrush mid-stroke. "You were in that video," the woman continued. "The one with the rich guy at the restaurant. That was you, wasn't it?" Others nearby paused, their conversations faltering. Kayla's stomach dropped. "I'm not who you think I am," she said quickly. But it was too late. The woman pulled out her phone and began scrolling. "I knew it. My sister shared it. People said it was staged or whatever, but I thought it was real." Kayla set the brush down, hands shaking. "I don't want attention," she said. "This isn't about that." The woman tilted her head. "Then why are you starting a place with him?" "Because women like us need more than a roof. We need a foundation." The words came out faster than she expected. But they rang with clarity. Someone behind her murmured, "Good answer." Kayla looked around. Some people still stared. Others nodded. One woman gave her a small smile. She realized then that being seen wasn't always dangerous. Sometimes, it was necessary. That night, she called Ethan. "They recognized me," she said. "Some of them think it was all for show." "Do you want me to handle it?" he asked. "No," she said. "I want to face it." There was a pause on the line. Then he said, "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." She didn't reply right away. Then softly, "So are you." By the end of the month, they had secured a location. It was an old elementary school building, donated by a community trust, just outside the city center. High ceilings, sunlit rooms, a small courtyard perfect for a garden. Kayla walked through the space for the first time with Ethan by her side. She could already see the cribs, the shared kitchen, the bulletin board with job postings and class schedules. "This is really happening," she said, almost in disbelief. "It is," Ethan replied. She turned to him. "Do you think they'll come? The mothers, I mean. Will they trust it?" "They'll come," he said. "Because they'll trust you." And for the first time, she believed it too. 3 weeks after securing the building, Amira House was buzzing with life. The paint was fresh, the nursery was stocked with donated cribs and blankets, and the front hallway had been transformed into a small welcome center with a table covered in flyers and a worn leather guest book. Every day brought something new: an electrician volunteering hours, a mother calling to ask about a bed, a local bakery offering to donate breakfast on Mondays. Kayla moved through it all with quiet purpose. She hadn't worn makeup in years, but now her face carried a glow that came not from polish, but from motion, from doing something that mattered. Ethan was still involved, but at a distance. He handled calls with donors, facilitated partnerships, and made sure the legal and logistical frameworks held. But he stayed mostly in the background. The spotlight belonged to her. And for the most part, that's how Kayla liked it. Until the spotlight turned back on. It started with a blog post. A local journalist, digging into the story of Amira House, wrote a glowing profile, From Sidewalk to Sanctuary, the homeless woman who built a home for others. Kayla hadn't agreed to an interview. The journalist had pieced it together from public filings, old videos, and second-hand accounts. The post went viral. Within days, reporters began calling. At first, Kayla declined to speak. But Ethan encouraged her to consider it. You don't have to tell everything, he said. But maybe the story helps someone else find the courage to ask for help. So she agreed to one interview. Just one. A quiet segment with a local station, filmed in the front garden of Amira House. She told the story with dignity. Not as a victim, but as someone who had fallen and gotten back up. The feedback was immediate. Donations increased. More mothers called. Volunteers came in droves. But not everyone cheered.
Deteswen Vanessa Hartkaldetan.
She didn't leave a voicemail. She never did. Instead, she showed up at his office the next day in a black suit and a sharper expression than he remembered. He hadn't seen her in over a year. They had ended things quietly, a relationship built on ambition, convenience, and occasional affection. She was a public relations powerhouse, brilliant and ruthless. She always knew how to shape a narrative. And she didn't believe in sentimentality. Now she stood in his office, arms crossed, the city skyline glowing behind her. You didn't tell me you were funding a media firestorm, she said. Ethan closed his laptop calmly. It's not a firestorm. It's a non-profit. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Non-profits don't go viral. Women like Kayla Monroe don't go viral unless someone pushes them. I didn't push anything. But you let it happen.
Et leaned back.
Why are you here? She dropped a folder on his desk. Inside were clippings, screenshots, social media reactions. Mixed reviews. Some admiration.
Some suspicion.
She's becoming a symbol, Vanessa said.
Était-ce dangereux?
To who? To her. To you. To the company. You built a brand on precision, Ethan. On neutrality. Now people are asking what your agenda is. I don't have one. That's exactly the problem. You can't be neutral in a narrative this charged. You're either the savior or the fool. Ethan stood. She's not a narrative. She's a person. Vanessa didn't flinch. And people get torn apart when they're elevated without protection. He looked at her for a long moment. She doesn't need protection. She needs respect. Vanessa gathered her bag. Respect doesn't trend. But scandal does. If anything comes out, anything about her past, her choices, it won't matter what you intended. She turned at the door. Call me when it starts falling apart.
Jelel bizoan wusti nos autocleanitup.
That evening, Kayla sat with one of the new residents, Maria, a 22-year-old mother of two, helping her fill out job applications. The TV in the common room played quietly in the background, a talk show discussing the rise of unexpected voices in philanthropy.
Kayla wasn't listening.
But then her name came up. The hosts were debating whether her story was inspiring or irresponsible. One of them said, "It's a sweet idea, but come on, no vetting, no degree, no experience. Would you really want to put vulnerable women under someone's care just because she went viral?" Kayla didn't flinch. But Maria glanced at her. You okay? Kayla forced a smile.
It's nothing.
Later, she sat alone in the nursery, rocking one of Maria's babies while the mother took a rare hot shower.
The baby cooed softly, eyes fluttering open and shut.
Kayla whispered, "They think I don't belong here. That I don't know what I'm doing." The baby blinked up at her, utterly unconcerned. She thought of Vanessa's voice in that office.
Sharp.
Efficient.
Merciless.
And for a moment, doubt crept in. What if they were right? She had no license.
No credencial.
Just lived experience and instinct. She thought about walking away, about letting Ethan find someone else to run things, someone safer, someone vetted. But then Maria came back, hair damp, face relaxed for the first time in days. She took her baby in her arms and whispered, "Thank you." Kayla nodded, holding back tears. That thank you reminded her of the day she first sat at a stranger's table and asked for leftovers. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just trying to live. And now, she was helping others do the same. The next day, Ethan called her. "Vanessa showed up," he said. "I figured she would. She thinks you're a liability." Kayla snorted. "She's not wrong. I'm a walking PR nightmare." "She's wrong about something else," he said. "She thinks this only works if it's clean. Perfect. Scripted." Kayla waited. "I think it works because it's real." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you still in?" "Every step," he said. Then he paused. "Are you?" She took a deep breath. "Yes. Even if the world says I shouldn't be." The story broke on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't a major news outlet or a cable network. It came from a small blog run by an independent writer known for digging into viral figures. The headline was simple but biting. "Who is Kayla Monroe really?" The piece wasn't long, but it was thorough. It detailed an incident 2 years earlier, when Kayla had been caught stealing from the register at a fast food restaurant where she worked. The article cited a police report, misdemeanor theft, charges dropped after a warning. It mentioned that she'd been evicted from a shared apartment shortly after, though it didn't say why. It also claimed she had used a false name at a free clinic, once, maybe twice. There were no accusations of fraud.
No violence. Juste 9 shadows tout caste doux.
The article ended with a question. Are we celebrating survival, or glorifying recklessness? By noon, it had been shared 5,000 times. By evening, it was trending. Kayla saw the article before Ethan did. Marta sent her the link in a private message, with only 2 words attached: "Stay strong."
Kayla read it in silence, then read it again.
She felt a strange numbness. Not panic. Not anger. Just an old familiar dullness, like a bruise that never quite faded. She didn't tell anyone right away. Instead, she kept moving through her day. She sat with a new resident, helped a volunteer sort clothing donations, changed a diaper for one of the toddlers whose mother was in court trying to regain custody. It wasn't until after dinner, when the last child had been put to sleep and the hallway lights dimmed, that she allowed herself to sit down and feel the weight of it. She sat in the darkened common room, eyes closed, hands clasped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. She had been waiting for this moment. From the very beginning, she'd known the past would catch up. She had just hoped that, by the time it did, people would see more than just the worst version of her. But she wasn't sure if they would. Ethan was in a meeting when Jordan texted him a link. He clicked it on his tablet, skimmed the first few paragraphs, and then closed it. He didn't need to read the rest. He knew it was true. Kayla had told him most of it herself, in pieces, in passing. She hadn't hidden her flaws. She had simply chosen not to make them the headline. He stood up, walked out of the meeting without a word, and called her. She answered on the first ring. "You saw it," she said. "I did." She waited for his judgment. But it didn't come. "What do you want to do?" he asked. She was surprised by the question.
I don't know.
"We can put out a statement," he offered.
Correct the record. Contextualise the past.
She shook her head, even though he couldn't see it. "If I defend it, people will say I'm making excuses. If I ignore it, they'll say I'm hiding. There's no way to win." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We're not here to win." She closed her eyes. "I want to tell the truth," she said. "But not to fight back. To reclaim it." The next day, Kayla posted a video on Amira House's social media page.
She sat alone in the nursery, back straight, voice steady.
"I wasn't going to say anything," she began. "But I believe in honesty, and I believe in growth. So here it is." She looked into the camera. When I was 17, I stole $47 from a register at the burger place I worked at. I used it to buy medicine and food.
I got cooked.
They let me go with a warning.
I lost the job.
A few months later, I lost my housing. I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. She paused. Since then, I've been running.
Not from the law, but from the shame.
I lied about my name at clinics because I was afraid they'd turn me away. I made mistakes. I survived. And now I'm trying to help others survive too. She folded her hands in her lap. If that disqualifies me, so be it. But I'm not going anywhere. And neither is Amira House. Then she ended the video. No music. No filter. Just truth. The internet reacted the way the internet always does, loudly, and with conflict. Some praised her vulnerability. Others doubled down on their criticism. A few news sites picked up the story again. A celebrity influencer shared the video with the caption, "Real courage.
Real leadership."
Within hours, it had over 1 million views. Ethan watched the storm unfold, but he didn't intervene. He had seen enough PR campaigns to know that the world would say what it wanted. But truth, when spoken clearly, had a way of cutting through noise. He showed up at Amira House the next morning with a tray of breakfast sandwiches. Kayla was in the front garden, watering the new seedlings with one of the toddlers beside her. He handed her a sandwich. "You're officially more famous than me." She laughed softly. "That's not a good thing." "It is when it's earned." They sat together on the bench near the front door. Kayla took a bite, then said, "You know, I thought the worst part would be the shame. But it wasn't." "What was?" "The fear that all of this," she gestured to the house, the garden, the children's voices behind the windows, would be taken away. "Because I didn't come from the right place." Ethan looked at her. "You came from the only place that matters. Experience. Empathy. You've lived what they're going through." She nodded. "But it doesn't feel like enough." "It never will. That's what keeps us honest." 2 days later, a reporter asked to do a feature on Amira House, not on the scandal, but on the success. Kayla agreed, but with one condition. "You don't lead with my past," she said. "You lead with our future." The article ran the following week.
The headline read:
"A house built on healing, how a formerly homeless mother is changing the system from within." It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough.
Autumn came softly.
The trees lining the street outside Amira House began to turn, trading green for gold. The mornings arrived cooler, wrapped in fog, and the afternoons no longer burned with the relentless heat of summer. Everything felt quieter, slower, as if the city itself were exhaling after the storm. Inside Amira House, the rhythm continued. Children's laughter echoed down the hallways. Volunteers moved through rooms with practiced ease. The garden out front bloomed unexpectedly, cherry tomatoes, herbs, even a small fig tree someone had donated late in the season. Kayla had found a kind of balance. Not peace exactly, but rhythm. Her days were full, her body strong again. Amira, now nearly 3 months old, slept curled against her chest each night, a soft, steady weight that reminded Kayla daily of why she couldn't afford to give in to fear. Then came the invitation. Ethan brought it one morning in a sealed envelope. Kayla was feeding Amira in the nursery when he knocked gently and stepped inside. "You have a fan," he said. Kayla smiled. Hopefully not the angry internet kind. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a formal letter from the City Council's Community Renewal Committee. They wanted to honor Amira House at an upcoming event, an evening gala celebrating innovative local nonprofits. There would be donors, city officials, press. And they wanted Kayla to speak. She stared at the letter in silence. Ethan watched her carefully. "You don't have to say yes." She didn't respond right away. Then she looked up. "They want me on a stage." "Yes." "In front of hundreds of people." "Yes."
After everything.
"Especially after everything." She folded the letter and set it down on the arm of the rocking chair. "I'll think about it." For 3 days, she avoided the topic. She buried herself in the daily tasks, intakes, budgets, scheduling. She walked the halls with a mirror in one arm and a clipboard in the other. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, playing imaginary versions of the speech in her head. Each version ended the same way: silence. Or worse, laughter. What if she froze? What if her voice cracked? What if someone stood up and said she had no right to speak for anyone?
Bud beneat zephyr, a quietet out bloomed.
What if they listened? On the fourth morning, she told Ethan she would do it. He didn't smile. He just nodded, as if he'd known all along. The night of the gala arrived like a storm disguised as a breeze. Amira House had been given a table near the front. Kayla arrived in a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, a pair of modest heels borrowed from one of the volunteers. Marta watched Amira backstage, cooing softly to keep her calm. Ethan met Kayla at the venue entrance. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and for once, looked less like a CEO and more like a friend. When he saw her, he said nothing, just offered his arm. Inside the grand hall, chandeliers glowed above polished wood floors. People in evening wear mingled, sipping wine and exchanging compliments. It was a world Kayla had only seen through glass before. Now she was in it. And she still wasn't sure she belonged. The evening moved quickly. Awards were presented, speeches made, videos shown. Kayla barely tasted the food. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers curled into fists so no one could see the shaking. Then her name was called. She rose. The applause was polite. Curious. Ethan gave her a nod. Marta, holding Amira in the back, smiled with quiet pride. Kayla stepped onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she expected. The microphone felt cold in her hand. She paused for a moment before speaking. "My name is Kayla Monroe," she began, voice clear but low. "And I'm here tonight not because I built something extraordinary, but because I survived something ordinary." A ripple went through the crowd, small, but noticeable. "For years, I was invisible," she continued. "You may have passed me on the street. Maybe you looked away. Maybe I looked away first. I've made mistakes. I've begged for food.
Ive stolen.
Ivelaid. I've done what I had to do to survive." She paused, then took a breath. But survival is not enough. It shouldn't be the most we hope for. Especially for mothers. Especially for children.
The room grew still.
Amira House exists because someone saw me, really saw me, at a time when I believed I was worth nothing. That moment didn't fix everything. But it started something. She lifted her eyes. I am not the only one with a story like mine.
You won't be the last.
But tonight, I'm not just a story. I'm a builder. A mother. A leader. And I'm asking you to help us continue. She stepped back from the mic. There was a moment of silence. Then someone stood. Applauded. Then another. And then the room followed. Kayla stood still, not smiling, not crying. Just breathing. She had spoken. And they had listened. After the event, donors approached. Several asked about expansion. A foundation representative requested a follow-up meeting. Ethan handled most of it, but he kept one eye on Kayla, who stood near the back of the hall, sipping water, Amira back in her arms. She looked tired. But more than that, she looked steady. When he finally walked over, she didn't speak at first. Just rested her head briefly against his shoulder. "I didn't think I could do that," she said. "I did." She gave him a look. "You always say that. Because it's always true."
She exhaled.
"Now what?" "Now," he said, "we keep building." She nodded, eyes on the exit. "And this time," she added, "we build so others don't have to beg to be seen." He didn't answer. He just walked beside her as she carried her daughter out into the cool night. 1 year after Kayla had stood barefoot on the sidewalk outside a restaurant in Pacific Heights, Amira House celebrated its official anniversary. The event was smaller than the gala, but warmer.
There were no tuxedos, no crystal chandeliers.
Just folding chairs set up under a white tent in the garden, trays of homemade food from volunteers, and children weaving between the tables with sticky hands and wide eyes.
A banéogne above the door, 1 year of shelter.
100 new beginnings. Kayla stood near the entrance, holding Amira on her hip. The child had grown strong and observant, already reaching for anything in motion. She wore a pale yellow dress someone had donated from a boutique down the street, and in the soft afternoon sun, her curls glowed like copper threads. Guests arrived slowly, many of them former residents. Some came with strollers, others with new jobs or new apartments to celebrate. One mother, who had arrived at Amira House months earlier with nothing but a suitcase and a terrified expression, now held the keys to her own rental unit and handed Kayla a thank you card with trembling hands. Kayla hugged her tightly. It wasn't about the buildings or the spreadsheets or the donor lists. It was about this moment. Later in the afternoon, Ethan arrived. He had just flown in from a business trip in Seattle, but he wore no suit, just a button-down rolled at the sleeves and a pair of scuffed loafers. His presence still turned heads, but by now, most people knew he was just Ethan, quiet, focused, the man who showed up when it mattered and disappeared when it didn't. He found Kayla near the lemonade table, rocking Amira as she greeted guests. "You made it," she said. "Wouldn't miss it." She smiled. "She took her first step yesterday. Of course, I blinked and missed it." Ethan looked down at the baby. "She's going to run before you can stop her." "Probably." They walked together through the garden, greeting old friends, laughing softly with staff. Marta was there too, handing out cupcakes and telling stories about late-night feedings and last-minute supply runs. A mural had been painted along the back wall of the building, portraits of mothers, children, hands reaching across barriers. It was bright and imperfect and beautiful. When the sun began to dip, Kayla stepped onto the small platform near the back porch. Someone handed her a microphone. She didn't need a speech this time. She looked out at the crowd, mothers, children, volunteers, donors, strangers who had become family, and began. "A year ago, I didn't think I'd be standing here," she said. "Not because I didn't believe in this place, but because I didn't believe in myself." She paused, letting the words settle. "When we opened Amira House, we didn't know if anyone would come. We didn't know if people would trust us, trust me, with something as fragile as hope." She looked down briefly at her daughter, then back up. "But you did. You came. You trusted. And together, we made something real." There was soft applause, murmurs of agreement. "I want you to know this isn't just a shelter. It's a promise. That your past doesn't define you. That your worst moment is not your only story. That you are not invisible." She stepped down to a standing ovation that wasn't thunderous, but deeply felt. Ethan met her at the edge of the platform. "You never needed a stage," he said. "Maybe not," she replied. "But it helped me see what I was capable of." As the evening wound down, guests began to leave. Children fell asleep in strollers. Volunteers gathered leftovers into containers. The banner over the door swayed gently in the breeze. Ethan and Kayla stood together in the quiet that followed. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what's next." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not opening a chain of Amira houses, are you?" "Not unless you want to." She laughed, but then turned serious. "I want to be here. I want to grow this, protect it. Not make it a franchise." He nodded. "Good. Because the strength of this place is in how personal it is." They stood in silence for a moment. "Do you ever think," she asked, "what would have happened if you hadn't looked up that day at the restaurant?" "All the time." "And I don't know," he said. "Maybe you would have found your way some other path. But I would have stayed stuck." She looked at him. "You weren't the one on the street." "No," he agreed. "But I was lost just the same." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Just something to mark the day." Inside was a simple certificate, nothing official. Just a mock-up with Ethan's signature at the bottom. To Kayla Monroe, founder and executive director of Amira House. She held it quietly for a moment. "I never thought I'd have a title," she said. "You earned it."
Andy fit mess up.
"You'll keep going." She tucked the certificate under her arm and looked around. The garden.
The building.
The people. The light. "We built something good," she said.
"No," Ethan corrected gently.
"You did." A soft wind picked up as the last of the guests drifted out to the parking lot. Kayla turned to him, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not rescuing me."
For walking bezied me.
He looked at her, eyes steady. Thank you, he said, for letting me. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Kayla stepped inside the house she built, not as a girl who once begged for scraps, not as a symbol, but as a woman who had faced the world and made it better. And in her arms, Amira stirred, the promise of a new generation carried forward in quiet strength.